Hey everybody, welcome back to Brake Time, and in episode 2 we're going to show you how to install the LSDeLorean Conversion Kit along with the Flyin Miata Little Big Brake Kit from start to finish. Now there's been some recent developments lately, and Josh Shattenkirk is now with DeLorean Midwest. So DeLorean Midwest is now offering all of the parts as one complete package, so you no longer have to source the parts from different places. I'll drop the information down in the description below on how you can purchase this. If you're interested in going in this direction, give DeLorean Midwest a call. They'll go ahead and set you up. So we've got a lot of ground to cover in this video. We're going to start with the driver's side. We'll walk you through the entire process, and towards the end of the video we've got a little bonus where we have some select passenger side installation videos as well. Anyway guys, on to the video. So when installing this brake kit, you're going to want to follow the instructions that are provided by Flyin Miata here. So obviously the first thing you want to do is remove the wheels from the car. Get the car supported on jack stands. So we have jacks here at the jack points, and then we have jack stands supporting the vehicle underneath as well for safety. So the first order of business is to remove the stock caliper, and how you do that is there are two bolts here. This one right here, and there's one just down on the other side right there. So you'll need a 19 millimeter to loosen those. I definitely recommend something to break those, like knocker loose or a PB blaster or whatever you can get, because they may be very difficult to remove. It's very tight in here, so it's going to be hard to get a breaker bar in there. So for the driver's side here, we're going to want to loosen the angle drive first before we take off the caliper. And after we take off the caliper, go ahead and take off the hub nut right here. So we'll set the angle drive to the side there. We had to disconnect it because that guide right there, that bracket is connected to the caliper from behind. As you can see, it's actually connected to the caliper bolts back there. Next, you're going to want to remove the two caliper bracket bolts, one here and one here at the bottom as well. It's right there. So these two have to be removed, and a breaker bar will make that easier to do. Okay, once you've broken the bolts, you can go ahead and remove them. You're going to need to hold the caliper up and then zip tie it to the upper control arm there so that it's not just hanging. You definitely don't want to do that. Alright, so now the caliper is out of the way there and it's not hanging from the brake line. So now that we have the caliper off, we're going to go ahead and break the hub nut, also called the outside spindle nut. So there are two spindle nuts. There's actually one on the outside and also one on the inside, and that one is right here, so you can see that. So we recommend a breaker bar. We're going to use a 24-inch breaker bar to take this off. There it is. Easy peasy. And now you can just go back to a regular socket. Now this will not be reused. The kit comes with a new one that is actually 32 millimeters approximately. So the hub washer will be reused. So that's something that you have to retain. This right here. Go ahead and simply remove the whole hub and rotor assembly. It's all connected together there, and set that aside. Next we'll be taking off the shield here. We're gonna have to remove these 4 bolts. So with a 17 millimeter, go ahead and remove the 4 bolts. And the heat shield won't be used anymore. The kit's bracket that you'll replace this original bracket here with does not actually fit the stock heat shield. So if you wanted to retain that, you could modify this, and that's something that we could do later on. But for this demonstration, we're just going to go ahead and leave it off per the instructions. You want to remove the hub spacer as well. That will not be reused. There's a new one that comes with the kit, and we'll show you what that looks like. So here's the stock right here, and here's the new one that comes with the kit. So you can see it's a lower profile. Okay, so once you've got the shield off, you can go ahead and take the caliper mounting bracket off. Wiggle it around, there you go. All right, so we got it. So that one is another part that you're not going to need because the kit comes with a new one, and this is the driver's side, and it's got the this piece right here is for the angle drive cable. So once you've removed all the hardware, you're going to want to clean all the surfaces here before you mount the hardware. So we'll go ahead and do that. You got to use some brake cleaner, and we're going to go ahead and brush off as much as we can to clean it down. So now that the spindle area is all clean, we can go ahead and start mounting the hardware. So the first thing you want to do as well is lay out all the parts. Make sure you're not missing anything, okay? So we have the original hub and rotor right here, and we're going to kind of show you how everything connects together. What you have that you're going to be reusing from the car, what you have that you're going to be using from the Flyin Miata kit, and what you have that you're going to be using from Josh's kit. So, first thing, wheel hub washer. That is stock with the vehicle. We're going to retain that. We're going to use that. This is the spindle, which is on the car. Out of the Flyin Miata kit, you're going to use the Wilwood caliper. You're going to use the caliper bolts, okay, which are these right here, and the caliper bracket, which is this purple piece right here. Okay, and we went ahead and numbered the caliper brackets because there's actually 2 here. Okay, so with Josh's kit, this is the other caliper bracket that is unique to the DeLorean. Now this is the driver's side one. You'll also have a wheel spacer, which is this guy right here. This will be going on the outside rotor. You also have your new wheel hub nut that Josh includes with the kit. And you've got 8 lock washers, 8 caliper mount bolts. That's all inside the hardware bag that is supplied with the conversion kit. You also get some dust caps. Josh includes a new 3D printed dust cap. You can see the little hole right there that would go over what you have here. So you gotta make sure that fits. So, and it looks like it does, so we'll be okay there. So here's the new wheel hub. We'll show you how all this connects right now real quickly on the bench, and our 10-inch rotor, which is this guy right here. This is the old assembly. So as you can see, you've got the rotor here. The whole assembly is going to be a little bit different now. The rotor is actually going to be placed on the outside. So it'll make replacing the rotors a lot easier in that configuration. So we'll set this to the side, and here's the new hub. So using Josh's diagram here, the assembly diagram, we'll go ahead and just kind of show you how everything kind of fits together before we install it, just to make sure everything fits right. Okay, so you've got the new rotor here. That's going to go right on here. So you want to make sure that this actually fits. This has to be a 10-inch rotor. It can't be smaller, can't be bigger. You're going with the 14s. Okay, and then over that you've got the wheel adapter. That's required as well for use with the 14-inch wheels. And you got your dust cap will fit over that. Okay, so you'll reuse your wheel hub washer right here, and then you'll use the new hub nut over that. Okay, so it all kind of fits on like this. Through the spindle, you'll also have this wheel hub spacer that you'll use as well. That'll go over the spindle. So here is the factory wheel hub spacer. You're not going to reuse this. It's a little bit deeper compared to the one that you're going to use here. So the caliper bolt is a 17 millimeter and the caliper mounting bolts are 13. So this 3D printed dust cap will go on the driver's side, and Josh also includes this metal dust cap that will go on the passenger side. So the caliper brackets, when you install this bracket, you need to torque the bolts to 20 foot-pounds, and the caliper bolts, those will be torqued to 26. These, for the Flyin Miata bracket, will be torqued to 33. So we've applied Loctite to all of the bolts. We're going to go ahead and assemble everything on the car. Okay, so this is the new caliper bracket. So we're going to install this in place of the original one, and you'll notice that this has sort of a built-in bracket for the angle drive cable. So you put it in this way, and this fits on top just like that. There we go. So you're going to want to start fitting the bracket bolts on there. Note that we have the Loctite on the threads as well. So just make sure the bolts are snug, but do not tighten them down yet, as we will be torquing these down to 20 foot-pounds. We'll set the torque wrench to 20 foot-pounds. There we go, first one down. Next we're going to mount the hub. First you want to mount the hub spacer on. So this is the hub spacer that is included with the kit. And you want to orient it this way. So you just put it on like this. It should actually slide on pretty easily. You should not have to put any oil or anything, but in case it is kind of hard, you can oil this up. But we cleaned this off really well. Alright, so here's the new hub. That should just slide on as well. Nice. So you're going to want to reuse this hub washer here. This is the original factory hub washer. Just put that on. And then we're going to put some Loctite on these threads as well. So we're just going to put a little bit of Loctite here. There we go. And here's the new, I'm going to go ahead and just hand tighten that for now. And we'll come in and torque that one down to 160 foot-pounds. So we'll have to get the big torque wrench out for that one. Okay, so now we are going to reconnect the angle drive. There we go. So the kit does come with a couple zip ties that you can use to connect the angle drive cable to that bracket right there. We're just going to zip tie the angle drive cable to the bracket right there, and there's just little slots that you can run the zip ties through. There you go, and then just trim off the excess and you are done. So for the outer spindle nut, you're going to want to torque that to 160 foot-pounds per the instructions. So this is a 1 1/4 inch socket. You could also use a 32 millimeter. There you go, 160 foot-pounds. Alright, so that concludes the hub installation. Now it's time to get the rotors on and then the calipers. So now we're getting our rotor installed here. And it fits on great. And then we'll put the wheel spacer on. This is required for the use of the factory 14-inch wheels. There we go. And here's the dust cap that the kit comes with. So we'll go ahead and see how that works on there. There we go. Not bad. Alright, now it's time to get the caliper on. In order to get the caliper ready for installation, you're going to need to install the Flyin Miata adapter bracket. And we'll show you how to do that. With the caliper oriented backside facing up, what you want to do is you're going to mount the bracket and you're going to connect the bracket with the logo facing up. So you're going to connect it right here. So you're going to run these bolts through here. So we're just going to go ahead and hand tighten these for now. We'll torque these after everything is installed, and these will be torqued to 33 foot-pounds per the instructions. So here's the completed adapted brake caliper. The Flyin Miata bracket on there. And now we're going to fit the caliper over the rotor. So just some clarification on the torque for this bolt right here and the lower one. They should be torqued to 26, not 33. The Flyin Miata instructions say 33, but that is for installation on a Miata. This is a DeLorean, so you've got this new bracket that is supplied with the conversion kit that has a different torque value than you would for a Miata. So here we are torquing the top caliper bracket bolt. There we go, 26 foot-pounds. There we go. Next we're going to torque these two to 33 foot-pounds. And for this one we're using a 6 millimeter hex. So now that we have the caliper completely torqued down, we can go ahead and refit the dust cap. There we go. Looks good. So the next step is to insert the brake pads here. So here are the Wilwood brake pads that come with the little big brake kit. So the first thing you want to do is want to remove the pin. That's pretty easy to do. Just lift up and pull out. And we'll be putting in the Wilwood brake pads that come with the kit. And just go ahead and line up the brake pads with the existing mounting holes there and replace the pin. gonna pull out a little bit so it latches back on. There you go. Just check to make sure it's secure. Not gonna move around anywhere. Now that the brake pads are in, it's time to start the brake line. So here is the metal dust cap, and you just really pop it in. It's really easy. So these are the new brake lines that you've got here. One of the notes in the instruction says that an intermediate fitting is included with the Wilwood kit, and those fittings are actually on the ends of the supplied brake lines. So you'll actually have to take those off. And connect them to here. For your fitting, you want to make sure that that side right there goes into the caliper. This side right here will mate with the brake line. There it is. So this is how you do it. I would also recommend putting some thread sealant on there. So we went ahead and picked up some of this Permatex thread sealant. Recommend putting that on all of the connections at the brake lines. All right, in order to remove the brake line from the hard line, you're gonna need to loosen this coupler right here. So there's a hex coupler that's a 13 millimeter. Once we get that loosened, then we can back off this 17 millimeter jam nut that's in there. And I like to use some knocker loose to kind of free up the connection there. So knocker loose is definitely something that you should have on hand if you're a DeLorean owner. So after you apply the knocker loose there to get that brake line free, I would just let it sit for a little while, let it work in there, and then you're going to want to come in with your 13 millimeter and break that connection. Once you're ready to break the connection there, at least on the driver's side here, you would go up. So push up a little bit like this, and a knocker loose works awesome. So you'll just back that off. There we go. So it is disconnected, and now we just got to back off that jam nut right there to loosen the hose. Definitely have a drain pan underneath to catch any brake fluid coming out. We're going to have to bleed these towards the end of the installation as air will have gotten into the system. Alright, now that we have the jam nut off, we can take out the brake line. So if there's another washer on the inside, you can take that out right there. So you're going to need to kind of wiggle this around a little bit because it's actually in there pretty good. This is sort of like a hex integral nut in a way. Actually, it's more like a... you just wiggle it around and you just kind of pull it out that way like that. So you can see how it was just kind of in there like this. So you just pull it out and you're good to go. So this part of it is done. Just got to install the new brake lines now. Alright, it's time to get rid of those old calipers in there. We're just going to cut the zip ties and just be careful you don't drop these on your nice control arms. There you go. So here's the old, out with the old, in with the new. So we'll just kind of set that aside here. So the first thing you're going to do with the brake lines is you want to back off that jam nut and just disconnect that. Alright, this side goes into the caliper and this side will connect to the hard line. Before we install the brake lines, we're going to apply some thread sealant just to make sure we don't have any leakage here. It is not recommended to use Teflon tape, but to actually use high temperature thread sealant. So just kind of smear it on as much as you can around the threads there. So what you want to do here is just remove that little protective sticker that's over that right there. Alright, so we're going to install the adapter fitting here. Go right into the caliper. Once you have this hand tightened, then you're going to want to turn this 1.5 to 3 turns, and that should do it. So this takes an 11 millimeter. That should do it. When you put your thread sealant on, just make sure you smear it all the way around the fitting so you're covering all the threads. We're going to go ahead and connect the brake line to the fitting here. Again, just hand tighten it at first. There you go, hand tighten it first. Another 1/4 turn on that one. This is where it's going to connect right in here. So we'll tighten that down once we have a good pathway to this brake line right here, to this connection point. So another thing you're going to want to consider is if you want to keep the original factory brake line coils on, and if you want to retain those, you should clean those up, and then we'll install those before we make the final connection. You could install those after you connect the brake lines, but it is a little bit more challenging to do that. It's better to do it as you're installing them before you make the final connection here to the hard line. So we have put the factory coil back on the new brake line here, so we'll go ahead and install it that way. This will give some added protection and also kind of preserve that stock appearance. So just give this like a 1/4 of a turn here. There you go. That's all you need. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just fit the new brake line in there. It should fit fine. Right into that hex fitting right there. And we'll go ahead and replace the nut, that jam nut that we removed. There's another one, a new one that was installed here. We'll go ahead and put that on there just to hold the brake line in place there. Alright, so here we go. Just get that in there. We'll tighten that up, but we won't tighten it too much. Just want to make sure that this sits right and that the natural curve of this brake line, that way you don't get any kinks. Right, that's the last thing you need. So this actually looks pretty good right there. We're going to go ahead and connect the sleeve. Thread that on as well. So I have found that before you really tighten down this jam nut right here, it's actually better to get this started, because you'll still want to kind of be able to move this around. Otherwise, the threads may not catch. So before you tighten down that jam nut, just start getting this hex sleeve going here on this fitting. And tighten that up by hand. Once that's tightened up by hand, then you can lock this jam nut down. That's the better way to go. So once you have this jam nut here tightened up, you can go ahead and start tightening up that line as well. Not too tight, just make it snug. There we go. Here you can actually twist the coil inside this little frame piece right here. That way it doesn't come out. So you can try to connect it all the way, but this the new brake line's pretty long. So this might work right here. So it still kind of preserves that stock appearance. For the passenger side, just go ahead and repeat the process here, right? So you connect your adapter fitting here to the caliper, then your brake line, the L connector here. Tighten that up by hand, then give it a 1/4 turn. And we'll go ahead and connect the brake line to the hard line right here. Just a 1/4 of a turn. Go. That's good. Remember, not too tight. So we'll go ahead and insert the brake line fitting through there. So got that in there, and you can go ahead and put the nut back on. Just thread that on, but don't tighten it. Just thread it on loose. Okay, just thread it on loose. So see how this wiggles around a little bit in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so back it off a little bit. There you go. So nice and loose, right? And that's how you want it to be before you connect this to the fitting, because if you connect it while after you've tightened this in, it's going to be harder for the threads to catch. So you want a little bit of some wiggle room in there. So we're going to put some sealant on here as well. You could put this before you run it through there or after, it really doesn't matter. And then you just smear it around. There you go. Just want to make sure you got good coverage on all the threads there. And we'll go ahead and thread that on. Yeah, hand tight. Then we'll go ahead and tighten that jam nut down. So we're tightening this down, but we're not going to over tighten it. It's just really there to hold the line in place so it doesn't move around. I think that's probably good. Yeah, that's good. This one here, we're going to use the 13 and get that snug. But again, we've got it hand tightened, and we'll probably give it another quarter of a turn there. Gonna make that snug there. A quarter of a turn should do it. There we go. Not too tight. And you can always check for leaks after you fill up the system and tighten it up a little bit more if that's the case, but you definitely do not want to over tighten that. So the last step is to bleed the brakes, and we're going to be using the Motive Products Power Bleeder. You can get this thing on Amazon. This is kind of what the tank looks like. It has a pump that you connect to the top. So we'll kind of show you the process on how to bleed the brakes here. But you got to make sure this thing is clean. So that's what we're doing right now. We're going to go ahead and clean this thing out. Then we'll go ahead and connect it and bleed the brakes. Alright guys, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop those down in the comments below, and stay tuned for some future episodes of Brake Time, including how to properly bleed the brakes. And once again, if you're interested in this, go ahead and give DeLorean Midwest a call. They'll go ahead and set you up with whatever you need. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Here's the bolt. Where's the other one? Right. So here's the bolts, and then here's, take the caliper out, and you want to secure this somewhere. You can use some zip ties.
So we're going to use some zip ties to secure the caliper right here to the control arm. We don't want it to hang off of the brake line.
Cool.
There we go. So we used a 24-inch breaker bar to get that off, and a 36mm socket to get that off.
Yeah.
So the next order of business here is to remove the rotor. Just be careful of that washer that's in there. Let's go ahead and take the rotor and the hub off, and there you go. Obviously you're going to clean up that spindle a little bit there. So we're going to use some brake cleaner to get that off right there. All this green residue. So you're also going to have to remove the dust shield as well. So you'll have to remove these 4 bolts. Josh does supply some new ones with the kit. So those are 13mm that you'll have to remove.
It's a bracket.
So here is the stock caliper bracket that we're no longer going to use, and you can see that compared to the new bracket that we're going to be installing. It's a big difference. So you want to make sure the mounting surface is completely clean before we start installing the kit. So that looks pretty clean. The new caliper bracket is going to go on first. Go ahead and start screwing in the bolts here for the caliper mounting bracket. So these have the Loctite on them. So we're torquing the caliper bracket bolts to 20 foot-pounds of torque. So the next thing you're going to do is install the wheel hub spacer in this orientation. So it goes right over it like that. There we go. That's required. The next thing you want to install is the hub itself, the new hub. We're just going to go ahead and put it on like that. There we go. So next we're going to install the wheel hub washer on. This is the original one. So let's go ahead and do that. So before we install the wheel hub nut, we're going to put a little bit of Loctite on there. So a little of the red Loctite on that wheel hub nut. So this is the new wheel hub nut that comes with the kit. It is approximately 32 millimeters, but we ended up going with a 1 1/4 inch socket for this one. It just fit better. So before you torque your outer hub nut, spindle nut, you want to check the inner spindle nut for 165 foot-pounds of torque. Now what we did notice is that the inner spindle nut is actually 1 1/4 inch as well. So this socket that we've got here that we're using for the new outer nut will also fit on the inner nut as well. So you're going to need to make sure you have enough room in here as well to get your torque wrench to be able to fit. So looks like we do have enough room in here, so we should be good to go. So per Josh's instructions, you want to set your torque at 165 for the inner spindle nut. So let's go ahead and check for that. Alright, we're at 165. So after you have confirmed that your inner spindle nut torque is 165, reduce your torque setting to 160 and go ahead and torque the outer spindle nut. So we're fastening on the outer spindle nut, but we're not tightening it just yet. There we go, 160 foot-pounds, perfect. All right, now it's time to install the rotor. So we'll just slide that right on. Look how easy that is. And the spacer plate, that's included with Josh's kit. We'll go ahead and put that. Again, that's required for the 14-inch stock wheels. So we're gonna just hold the rotors in place here with a lug nut. So next we're gonna want to install the adapter bracket to the caliper, the new Wilwood caliper, using these supplied bolts that have a hex head on them. We've already put the red Loctite on those. When you're installing the adapter bracket to the piston, you want to make sure that it's in the right orientation. So the logo has to align with the back of the piston, okay? So we're going to be using a 6mm hex socket to torque these to 33 foot-pounds of torque onto the calipers. So what we'll do is we're going to torque down the brackets at the end of the installation once these are on. So you don't need to torque those down right now, just get them tight enough to where it's holding in place.